get started. Good evening and happy Sabbath. So happy that those of you, even though we're few in number, are out this evening, and just want to share some things with you that I think that you'll find quite interesting, and something that I think will help to strengthen our faith in a God who is omniscient, omnipresent, and He's everything. As we studied in the Sabbath school lesson this morning, He's everything that we need, more than anything that we could ever ask, and it's just a privilege to know God and to have Him operate in our lives, and so we ought to give our lives to Him. We ought to trust Him in faith. All right. So this evening, let's just start with a word of prayer. Our Father and our God, we're thankful to you for the blessings of this Sabbath day, for every gift that you have given to us, and more so than the material things and the things for sustenance, we're thankful most of all for Jesus, for his life that he gave for us and that he gives for us and that he shares with us each and every moment. Thank you for your love, and we pray that as we contemplate on your goodness and the way that you have led us in the past and some of the things that we'll take a look at this afternoon, we pray that you would help us to share that goodness with others that we come in contact with so that we can go home and live with you forever. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. So I've entitled this presentation here, Tales of Egypt, and just by way of information, for those who may not know, my name is LeRoy Barnes. I'm one of the local elders here at the church. My wife, Dawn, in the back there. We were privileged to go to Egypt, to visit Egypt back in May of 23, and just learned a lot of things. It was a very fascinating time, and we had 4 other couples. There were 5 couples, and we all went to Andrews University together, and so it was just a nice time recapturing our friendships and the bonding and the time that we shared with them. So it was a very interesting trip. So I want to start off by saying that one of the things that I want to share with you is how what's the word I want to use? How much impact that Egypt has not only on us as a world, but from a biblical and spiritual perspective. When you think about the fact that Egypt really cradled, it was the Hebrew, God's people, that were submerged into that culture. And you recognize, for example, with Moses, and I'll talk about him some more, Moses was just, if you think about it, Moses was just as much Egyptian as he was Hebrew. He was born by birth Hebrew, of course, but he was the son of Pharaoh's daughter. She caught him. She found him in the bulrushes there in the Nile River, where we got a chance to go down and see, and so forth. And her mother was able to take care of him up to a certain age. I don't know what that was, probably 12, 13 or something. Maybe it could be a little bit less. But then he went to live with. In Egypt with the daughter of Pharaoh and grew up to manhood. So he was just as much Egyptian as he was Hebrew. And so that has an impact on how even the Bible was written, the Torah. It's immersed with Egyptian thinking, with Egyptian philosophy, Egyptian culture, and God used that to be able to save a nation and save the world.
He was in Egypt 40 years.
Yes, he was there for quite some time before he went up to Midian and so forth. So a couple of things that just starting out here, I want to just give you some modern information about modern-day current Egypt. Egypt has a population, if you look on the CIA website, they have world facts. It's roughly about 109.5 million people there in Egypt. And the country is predominantly, today, is predominantly Muslim. And of the Muslims, it's predominantly Sunni Muslim. 90% Muslim is 10% Christian, with the majority of the Christians being Coptic, Orthodox, Armenian, Apostolic, Catholic, Maronite, Orthodox, and Anglican. So it's roughly 10% Christian and 90% Muslim. And most of the Egyptians are people, again, of people of faith. And you think about the three monotheistic religions of which we are part of. From Abraham, you have the three leading world religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And so, one of the things that I want to say, and this is talking about today, most people that are religious, Christians, Islamic people, Muslims, are good, kind people. When you go over there and most of, it's a small percentage of Islam or Muslims that are these radical, very, yes, roughly about 10%. But most people there are very, very kind, they're very moral, upright. I was talking to one of the Egyptians, and he said, you know, if you were walking down the street and money came out of your pocket and fell to the ground, most of the persons there would rush up and say, you know, this is, you dropped this, that kind of thing. So just talking about just the general nature of people. And so I wanted to just share that with you. But primarily, the world that we're going to talk about, okay, the world that we're going to talk about is ancient Egypt, which is not an Islamic world or Christian world, whatever. They had their Egyptian religion and so forth. So I want to share a couple of texts with you in the stories, but I want you to enjoy the pictures. I'll try to talk about them as well too as we go along, and I'll try to move quickly. Okay, all right. Oh, look at that. Oh, now that looks familiar there. Oh, that's Pharaoh. That's Pharaoh LeRoy right there. I was playing around with a little bit of AI there, Shirley. So that's what happened here. But the headdress there is the headdress of the Egyptian pharaohs that for many centuries, millenniums, and they have a couple things at the top of the headdress that represented their particular gods at the time. One is a god. Was a snake, and I think the other one is a vulture or something like that. And you'll see that in there. And there's another one. That guy looks familiar, right? Yes. All right. Okay. So enough levity. We'll move on to something else. When we got there, we had to stop at a shop. There were some things that we had to get before we started our journey. And there, I'm just trying on a headscarf which is very functional, because if you're out in the desert in arid areas and this wind starts to pick up, you need something. You need something to cover your head to keep shade, and then you need something that you can wrap around and you can breathe on the sand there. So I was just trying that on. All right. So Egypt today as a nation. What you'll see, and what I'd like to leave as an impression on you is that it's mostly desert. Okay, so I don't know if this clicker is working, or this. But when you go on the screen, it just disappears. Whoop. Sorry about that. That was a fast trip. Oh boy. Yes, I did say. Okay. But maybe I can just come over here. Okay. So Egypt, this is the modern day boundaries of Egypt. You have Sudan to the south, Libya to the west, and you have a lot of people don't realize that the Sinai Peninsula is part of Egypt. That's part of Egypt too as well, with Israel being up to the north and east, up to the north and east of that. And in Saudi Arabia also to the east, across the Gulf of Aqaba, I believe that is. So you have, geographically, you have the Red Sea, which has two little fingers, which is really part of that same body of water, which is the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gulf of Suez. Anybody heard of the Suez Canal? Yes. Okay, so big ships go up through the Suez Canal that take goods around the world. But the Red Sea is the big body of water, but those are kind of part of the Red Sea too as well. Yes. Then you have the Nile River. And when you talk about a geographic feature of a nation, there's probably nothing that stands out more in Egypt than the Nile River. And Egypt, the Nile River is the main geographic feature of Egypt. When you talk about the Nile and you say the river, you're only talking about one river. In the Bible, when it says, and they went to the river in the Old Testament, whatever, it's talking about the Nile. When you look on either side of it, all of that is desert. And you have this tract around the river on both sides that's very fertile, and that all of the stuff grows, and they grow everything there. They grow, I can't even name all of the things that grow there, but everything that you can think of grows on the fertile soil. When you think back in Bible days, they haven't dammed up the river. So to the south there, where you see Lake Nasser, which is part of the Nile River, it wasn't spread out like that, because they put a dam there, and so that's kind of filled up. But you have the east bank and the west bank of the Nile River, and we went to different places along there that we stopped at. Yeah, I can advance it to the next. Whoops. Okay. Hard to see some of that stuff, but so we have what we call Lower and Upper Egypt. Now, when you say Lower and Upper Egypt, you're not talking about north and south. What they refer to as Lower and Upper Egypt is from elevation. So the southern part is higher than that's why the river flows from south to north and empties into the Mediterranean Sea. So up is Lower Egypt, and down there to the south is Upper Egypt, because they use upper and lower in terms of elevation. Yeah. Because today we use the north, south, east, west, that kind of thing. So what you have, we flew to Cairo, which is the big city, up near where Giza is, where the pyramids are, and we took some day trips to Saqqara, Alexandria. We went to Alexandria, which is a sort of a Greek city. It's named after Alexander the Great. And then we flew from Cairo. We went to the Red Sea. We went to and then we flew down to Luxor, and we visited some temples there, and we did museums in Cairo and Luxor, and some temples in Luxor. And then we got on the boat at Luxor and took the boat down the Nile River all the way down to Aswan, where the dam is. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Don. All right. I put this in there because I wanted to let you know how warm it was at the time that we were there. That day it was going up to 110, and at the time that we got off the plane, which was early in the morning, right? It was 109 in Aswan. Yeah, it was all right. Here's a picture of the Red Sea that we were able to go to. And in my mind's eye when I was young, you think about, okay, the Lord parted the Red Sea, and I used to think, and it became dry. And of course, God can do anything that he wants, so it doesn't matter what. But I was thinking, well, if it's mucky, if it's muddy, and the water's gone, wouldn't they? When you look at the Red Sea, it's a very pebbly. It's gravelly and pebbly. So it's not a river like you would think of a river is here, where it's got muck. So once that water gets pushed up out of the way, it's like you're walking on concrete. It's like because it's pebbly all the way across there. So I found that to be quite interesting, you know.
And we wanted to get in it, but it was ice cold.
Yeah, it was cold. It was really cold.
Hot outside, it was ice cold, but we stayed in it for like an hour.
Yeah, it was cool.
Just 'cause it was so hot. too.
No, because it was the Red Sea.
Yeah, we just want. What's the song? Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea, man. Okay, so Dawn put that picture in there too, and she's taking her pictures of her feet in the Red Sea. Just had to take that. Yeah, there we are at the Red Sea. Okay, the next picture is these are the group of people that we went with, our crew, and this was in Aswan. We went to this place called an unfinished obelisk. Now, an obelisk are some things that, the Washington Monument is an obelisk. Any obelisk that you see is patterned after obelisks that were created basically in Egypt. This one is interesting because the workmen had started carving this obelisk out of the ground. So this obelisk has been sitting there.
Tall and sharp.
Yeah, it's been sitting there for 3,000 years or more. It's been there and it's unfinished. The reason being is because during the time that they were chiseling it, it fractured. And you can see the fracture I'll show you another picture. You can see the fracture in the middle along that long crack. And maybe there's another one. If you look up at the top, near the top, you see that long fracture in it. So all these years, they just left it there because there's nothing more they could do with it, and they left it there. So it's now, all these years later, it's a place where people can go and see. It's an interesting artifact.
But in many of the temples, they have obelisks
All over. All right. This is the temple at Philae, and this temple, was this one the one that was underwater, or it was another temple?
This one used to be underwater.
Right, because when they dammed the river, and it started to make a lake behind it, this one was underwater. So what they did was they went and they cut all of the pieces there. They got monies from people, made donations from foundations all over the world. I forgot how long ago this was, 40, 50 years ago. And they cut sliced it through, and they came and they rebuilt it at this spot here, this temple at Philae. So. The date of that? When they did that, or when it was? Oh,
Years ago.
yeah, it's a couple thousand years old. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing with Egypt. Everything there that you see, what I've read in archaeological books is that there's two things why things are very much preserved there: dry, heat, sand. And the stuff gets buried in that stuff, it can last for a long, long time because it's not varying that much in humidity and that kind of thing. So it lasts for a long time.
Another thing is when you go in there, and we have lots of people, I won't steal this stuff.
No, go ahead. No, please.
You can still see the very fine, intricate detail of
Right.
on all of the walls and everything when you go inside, although it's that old or it may have been buried for a really long time. Sorry.
It's the cradle of civilization.
Yes. Right. So this is a part of that. And many of we took lots of pictures. You can see, if you look at this picture, and I know it's hard to see, but you can see where the water line, where it was underneath the water, which looks kind of darker on the lower parts of those pillars or columns there. So they had that stain on them, and they just left it like that when they cut and built it in place. Egypt has about, at that time, by the research, they said they had something like 1,500 gods. And so everywhere you go in the temples, they have a temple for various gods. One of the gods, his name is Osiris, one is Iris, Hathor is another one. But, they were devoted in their adulation of these gods, and so they wanted to depict them in various places, but as well as depictions of people in their everyday life as well too. So you'll see that, you'll see these intricate carvings, and again, these things are 3,000-4,000 years old and still sitting there like that. So these are the ladies of the group that went inside. I forget which temple that we were in. Philae, still the Philae temple. Oops, this thing is. So there's a couple right there. Wow. You know who that is? Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. This is a slide that I put in there. Egyptians back then mummified everything. So they didn't just mummify humans, and so forth, but they mummified animals as well too. They were became experts at mummification.
This is at the Mummy Museum.
This is at the Mummy Museum. They mummified all kinds of. So one of the things that they revered or they worshiped was the crocodile. Yeah. You'll see crocodile head gods and so forth. So they mummified them so that they could preserve them. And usually when they mummified things, it was so that in the afterlife, their body would be preserved, right? So that they could go to whatever world that they were going to, right? So here you have mummified. And I forget, did they say some of these crocodiles were huge? I think they could get up to 25 feet long, yes. Or 25, 30 feet long. And that was amazing to me when they said the length of these crocodiles. Here you'll see, and I'm sorry the picture isn't bigger, but my cousin on the right is Reginald Barnes. He's tall like me, and my good friend Brian Philpotts on the left there. They're both our eye surgeons, and so we were traveling through Cairo, and they saw this hospital, and they said, hey, let's stop here. We want to take a picture in front of it. And
the person in the middle is our tour guide. And he was our tour guide for the whole 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
So
yes.
They wanted to get out and meet the other ophthalmologist in the hospital, but they didn't find any inside. But they wanted to take a picture.
Right. Some of my pictures are out of place. I didn't have time to really put them. But I wanted to let you know that when we went to Aswan and all over Egypt, security is very good. They don't mess around there. So I wanted to show you they have the latest whatever vehicles and whatever equipment they need as the soldiers to keep knuckle brains from not trying to start up any foolishness or getting out of order. You're going to stay in order when you go overseas and you go to these countries. So this one of their modern day vehicles there. This picture is when a spice shop. And this is just a small representation of the stuff that grows in the fertile along the Nile. And the aroma is so aromatic. I think you went in there, Don. I don't know if you want to say something about that. But it represents all kinds of different spices, from turmeric to just everything that you can think of is there at this one particular place. And this is, again, the Philae temple. I think this is just a slide showing us entering into the gate there to go inside the Philae temple. So, again, Egypt is 90% Muslim, right? So you're going to see mosques everywhere, especially when you go in the big cities. You'll see mosques, and some of them very ornately designed, and if you go to the mosque, you have to take your shoes off. Mm-hmm. You can't just. And I think the ladies, you all had to they had to dress in a headscarf, that kind of thing. That's the respect that you have to give for their particular. And this was one at night when we were on the Nile River. They had it lit up. I'm trying to see. there I'm trying to just show that even in the modern times, you know, there are people that are still live a Bedouin life, so to speak, and you know, so there's riding donkeys. And now it's interesting driving in the streets of Cairo. They have the lines on the ground for lanes and so forth, but as our guide said, the lines on the ground are just decorations because the cars are going like this. It just you have to know what you're doing, and people are walking through all of that and getting to the other side of the street. So it's a very interesting. Yes. Here's a picture of the Great Pyramids of Giza from a portion of Cairo. And if you think about it, you know, during that time, Cairo was probably just a little dot, and the pyramids were far in the distance. Well, now Cairo is a city of about 23 million people. So it doesn't take you long to get to the pyramids when you get to Cairo. You just get on the freeway and then they're right there because the urbanization is almost up to where they are.
Can I give my experience with this shot?
Yes, please.
So when we get there, of course, the whole reason you want to go to Egypt is to see the pyramids. Like, if I went there and I didn't see the pyramids, I would feel like I didn't go there, right? And so we got there a couple of days before the rest of our group because I organized the group, so I wanted to be there to receive them when they came. And I wanted to get my time clock, sleeping time clock on Egypt time properly. And I wanted to sleep one day before everyone got there. But our tour guide said, no, I want to take you guys out the next day. So we got there at 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, I'll pick you up at 10. I said, okay. And I was like, okay. And he said, I just want to show you a little bit of Cairo before the rest of the group gets here. I said, okay. So he picked us up. We're driving. We're in this great city, busy city, Cairo. And I'm thinking, okay, he's just going to tour. About just 15 minutes later, we're driving down the highway, and he says, I'm in the car, we're chatting. No, go back. And he goes, Dawn, look to the right. And when I look to the right out the door of the car, I see this. And you can't even, maybe from the picture, you can't appreciate how huge they are. Yeah. And I mean, tears almost came to my eyes at seeing the pyramids, and the thought that I had, I don't know if you're going to say this later.
Go ahead.
The thought that I always had, and I just said this to Andre, when you're traveling through Egypt, the Bible is just everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. If you see a bulrush, Moses got stuck. Moses was put in the bulrush, you know. And the Nile River, you can see the Nile River out of your hotel room. But when I saw that and I knew how old they were, I thought to myself, and I said to LeRoy, had Jesus gone to Giza when he was on earth, he would have seen the pyramids. Mm-hmm. And that blew my mind as to how old they are. Mm-hmm. They were there before Jesus was born. And so
longer than that.
when you know about that history and you see the breadth of how huge they are and how intricately they were made, it really takes your breath away.
It really does. Yeah. The Great Pyramids of Giza were built about 4,500 years ago. So they were here. When Christ was born on the earth, they had already been here 2,500 years.
That's right. Yes.
And it's just it's an amazing thing. Here, I just wanted to capture again, you know, everything in a place is not all modern. So I imagine this Bedouin shepherd here, probably very similar to somebody who was there 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, doing the very same thing, herding taking care of his sheep in the very same method, probably the same type of dress that they wear and so forth. So I just wanted to capture, to put that in there. We took lots of pictures. So here's a picture, and I don't know which one of that. In the pyramids of Giza, there's three. This is the Great Pyramid. Okay. And you can look at our group and you can see the perspective if you kind of look back up along and see the scale of it. When you come up to the pyramid, it's hard to imagine how they got these blocks and put all these blocks up to that height. And they were these were the tallest man-made things on Earth up until we got into to the modern age. These things were the tallest things that were on the Earth at the time. And so, that slipped in there. In the rooms on the ship, on the what do you call it, the cruise ship, they would do a little thing like that every day. So I made this thing for people at work because they were interested in seeing stuff like that. But this is a picture looking at the Nile River from our hotel in Cairo. So this is hotel room in Cairo. And we're looking out our window, we were looking around. It's a very modern city, very bustling city, but there's this huge dichotomy between what you would call, I guess, the wealth and the poverty as well too, you know. So, but here you can see some of that. This is inside the hotel that we stayed, some of the sculptures that they had in there. And it's a very, very modern hotel, so, and had a lot of security in there. Pyramids of Giza. So again, look at the scale. This is our guide there. His name was Osama, and what's his last name again? I forget. Osama. I can't remember. But you just see the scale of the pyramid going up, and the way the pyramids look, those blocks. You know, for some reason, I always thought that the pyramids were just blocks on an outward layer, you know, and that it was mostly hollow inside. But that's not true. It's solid because the blocks are all the way through. The channels that go through them are very narrow in comparison to so that's why they've been able to just stay there for so long, because it's solid blocks all the way through. You know, it's not a hollow thing. Another picture from a different perspective. And here's one. I think I'm taking the picture and I'm almost looking up like that, straight up. You can see a different perspective and see the scale of the.
He's not even tall as the brick.
There's Dawn looking up at the Great Pyramid, and I took a picture of her. Around the pyramid, you have a lot of little dogs because they have people that, with the security that stay there to guard the pyramids, right? And so at night they feed them food scraps, so you'll see a lot of them around. And there's one there just trying to get a little shade because it is hot. So I thought I'd just take a little picture of him taking a snooze there. And then there's Dawn and myself. We're sitting, so again, to get the scale of what that is.
Wow.
All right. So that's the pyramids, and I think I've gone through all of the pictures of the pyramids. This is what we call Egyptian fast food, and it's very good food. That's the thing about it. It's called kushari,
Okay.
and it has onions, it has corn, it has lentils, chickpeas, and it's very, very tasty. Yeah, a little vermicelli, and vermicelli. Right. So you take the tomato sauce, and you just pour it on top of that, or you have some other pepper olive oil, right, which is the one in the middle. And it's very, very delicious, and it's much better for you than McDonald's. We're always intrigued by it when people go overseas and like Americans, they say, "Oh, I need to go to McDonald's," and we just what? Why would you want to go to McDonald's? You know, eat the local food. But go ahead. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Prior to going, I always know some of the things I want to eat. Okay. And then the people that are in the airport that were from Egypt, I would say to them, what is a must-have when we go to Egypt? You know, what restaurants do we need to go to? What kind of food? And almost every person without fail would say, you have to eat kushari when you go. So I had sent a list to Osama to say, we want to eat at these places. We want to eat these kinds of food. So on the very day that he surprised me with going to the pyramids with just LeRoy and I. Of course, we went back the next day with our group. He took us to go and have this because he wanted to do my little checklist.
Yeah, it is delicious. It is delicious. Now, this is me, and I don't know which pyramid that was. I'm not sure which one it is. This is the one in Saqqara, right? So it's not at Giza. So this is a pyramid. I had to go down backwards with everybody that goes in at the top, at the angle of the thing. And it has a long wooden raceway that goes down, and it has these slats. You can see them behind me. But it's a long way down. It's probably like over 100 feet. And at the angle, it's even longer because of the angle that you're going, because it's probably 100 feet down. But it's so when you get to the bottom, you're exhausted. But I had somebody take a picture of me down there, just to show. Thought I had another one of that, but all right. This is a statue of one of the most prominent pharaohs in Egypt's history. And this is Ramses II, or otherwise known as Ramses the Great. And there's many reasons why they call him Ramses the Great. He's one of the most prominent pharaohs in Egypt's history. I think he had 100 children, so I guess that's one of the reasons why they called him Ramses the Great. And he built a lot in Egypt. He built a lot of temples, built a lot of buildings of commerce and trade. He was a great builder, and he was a great warrior, pharaoh as well too. So there's statues of him that they've discovered everywhere, and this was one that they discovered there at Saqqara. Memphis? Well, Memphis, I think Memphis is near Saqqara, or near there. Another aspect of him.
Interesting is how they found this statue.
Yes, tell me.
They found this statue of him. This is in Memphis, in Egypt. They found it face down, covered in muck and mire and growth. And when they unearthed it, some school children had found it, and when they unearthed it, they realized it was sort of a body or a sculpture. And then when they eventually, you see how long it is, and they turned it over, they realized it was one of the ancient statues, but it was without its legs. And so it's been in this position for hundreds of years. And then they built that edifice around it to protect it from the elements. But it was found out in a field and then eventually moved here.
Yep. All right. This is what they call the Great Sphinx. And the Sphinx is at the same place where back in Giza. So some of my pictures are back and forth. But the Sphinx is at Giza, and is the same age as again, the other things that are there as well, too. So it's our group there. We went to a little hotel restaurant there that is near in Giza, near where the pyramids were. So we wanted to take a picture with the pyramid in the background like that. And here we went to the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. They have lots of museums in Cairo and in Egypt, as you can imagine. And archaeology has, in the last couple hundred years, has brought a lot of things from the sand that they now proudly display in these different cultural museums.
If you're wondering, I have to defend myself. If you're wondering why I have that yellow muumuu on, it's because they lost our luggage. And I didn't have luggage for like 6 days. Oh, wow. And so in many of the pictures you may see me, they just took me to a shop, and each one of those was like $20. So I didn't know how long I was going to be without luggage. So I bought like 8 of them. So that's my excuse.
So the other girls were in solidarity with you, right? So they said, well, since you have to wear that, we're going to wear ours the same day. So I thought they were in solidarity with you. All right, this one I put in, I thought is quite interesting because this is a papyrus writings on this thing. Now, when you look at this thing, it looks like something that was just made yesterday.
It does.
This thing is a couple thousand years old.
Right, right.
And the papyrus, the reeds, they grow along the riverbank. And I've never seen anything like them because the stalk is not round, it's triangular. And maybe that's where they got the idea to make pyramids, but it's triangular. And they cut them and they strip them. They strip them on the three sides, press out the water, lay them flat, and lay them in strips, lay them flat. And that's what they make the what do you call them? Not parchment, papyrus, right? And when it dries, after it dries, and they put their writings and they put so forth. So here's a papyrus that is, again, thousands of years old, and it just looks like somebody wrote it and just put it there yesterday, you know. So I was pretty impressed with that.
It's pretty stable.
It's very stable. It's very stable.
More than the paper we get from wood.
Could very well be. Yeah, because it doesn't age, it doesn't yellow or anything like that. It just, this is, let me go ahead and see if I can see, go back. Yes, this is a statue of, I think it's Khafre, who is one of the big pyramids at Giza was built for. And so I put it there as an example of the type of rock. That's the black rock, which is that's basaltic rock, is the black. So what you see a lot of is basaltic rock that these sculptures are made out of, or you'll see the other one is alabaster, or you have other types of rock that they use to make these sculptures out of, and this is one of the ones that is used. The Pharaoh of Egypt is a very powerful individual, very powerful, and I want to get to that in a minute. We talk about Joseph and his time there in Egypt. This is a museum in Cairo, and it's famous for a lot of things that are there, but one of the most famous things that's inside there is some of the stuff of Tutankhamun. Okay. And probably Tutankhamun is the one of Egyptian that a lot of people know about or have heard about because
Commonly called King Tut.
King Tut, yeah, commonly called King Tut. The reason why it's so is because in the Valley of the Kings, where they were able to find where these pharaohs were buried, Howard Carter was the archaeologist who discovered him, and in 1922, I believe it was, and he discovered a tomb that had not been raided. They hadn't found it. The modern peoples hadn't found it. He was the first person. He and his Egyptian counterpart were the first person when they found it. They were the first person to have seen Tutankhamun from the time of his burial. So they were the first persons looking at him when they opened it up after 3,000 years. Wow. And so all of the stuff was there. So here's a statue of Ramses again. Ramses, you see statues of him everywhere. It's Ramses the Great. And the position that he's standing, the left foot is forward, and he's got his two hands clenched like that. And that is a position that shows his superiority. It's and prominence. You know, all the pharaohs when they make statues of them, they show them with their left foot forward. I don't know the reason why that's so, but.
And it's actually the same stance of the statue that was lying down in Memphis, and he was holding the same thing. So you see that theme repeated all throughout.
Yeah. This is a sarcophagus there that's inside the museum. So in their burials of people that are prominent, they put them in, what do you call the things? They put them in burial sort of caskets, and some of them are nested, and then they put them in stone sarcophagus, and some of those are very, very ornate. They took a lot of time to do those things for somebody who was just going into the ground. What does that say there? Okay, that's Khafre. That's Khafre, one of the great pharaohs. And again, he's buried there in Giza. Well, he's not there now, but he was built as his burial spot with the three great pyramids, Khafre and his Khufu, I think it was his son, and then Menkaure. So it's a father, son, and grandson of those three great pyramids.
Wow.
That were. Again, you see there a pharaoh, and I think those are two goddesses on either side. The pharaoh was considered, the people, Egyptian people considered him a god, right? So oftentimes he's depicted as a god with their goddesses or whatever. And so you see him there with the left foot forward and the two hands clenched around, I forget what they call it.
Something of interest about this whole museum, this is the National Egyptian Museum, is it's very hot outside, and they said, guess what, this museum is not air conditioned. Well, I wasn't trying to go into anywhere that wasn't air conditioned, but yet we were not hot inside. So when you think about the architecture or what we consider to be technology in this day and age, the way that the building was designed, it was not hot inside. So, you know, if you think about the pyramids and some of these things, these great feats of architecture, this big old building, it's very, very old, with all, and it was not hot inside.
Wow. That is amazing.
All right, so here, this representation here is the boy king, what we call the boy king, Tutankhamun, King Tut. Mm-hmm. This is a representation of him. The Egyptians were very good at using and understanding how to use their pigments and so forth. So what you have is, even though these things were buried for centuries or long periods of time, they represented the persons exactly the way that they would have looked. So he would have looked like this, with the pigment, the color, and everything, and it hasn't changed in that long period of time. So that's a closer picture of him. So that's King Tut, and he died when he was young. I think he was like 19 or 20, 19 when he died. Me standing beside one of those nested coffins, if you will. I don't know who that was there, but it's a nested coffin, and they have coffins inside coffins. King Tutankhamun was buried in I think 3 or 4 nested coffins. The first one was either solid gold or silver, and then gold, and then another one, and then inside of a big sarcophagus. And they just went through so much to put these people that they revered, very elaborate. And there's a picture of his funerary, what they call funerary mask. This is what Howard Carter found when they unearthed and took all those nested coffins apart, and they cleaned it up and everything. And this thing, I think, weighs about 30-something pounds or something like that. It's like, yeah, it's pure gold with, I forget what the gems are. This is this is a gilded, it's not a coffin, but this box it's a funerary box. What it has in there, inside of it, are jars which have the organs of the deceased. So the canopic jars inside, which are probably made out of alabaster, are inside this wooden box, which is overlaid with pure gold. So it's just amazing, the stuff that they made.
They preserved the organs.
Yes.
Mummifying the body.
It's a couple of his slippers, and he had thousands of sandals like that. This is one of the nested coffins that he was inside. And you can see how it comes apart. And it's like those nested dolls that have, you keep pulling them. It's hard for me to describe it. Yes, right. And there's that famous mask it's my friend there. His name is Brian Philpotts, and took a picture there beside that that mask of Tutankhamun.
You're leaving out the best part.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, so you're not supposed to take pictures inside there, right? They have guards inside there saying, yeah, right, yeah, don't take any pictures inside there. But here's the thing. They, if you ingratiate them, or if and slip them a little, yeah. You,
Go
go,
back to the gold thing.
yes,
That right there.
okay.
Okay, so when you, one of the big deals when people go to this museum, the National Museum of Egypt, is to see King Tut. And so, Tutankhamun. So when we say King Tut, but when you're there, they never shorten it. It's always Tutankhamun. And so, the reason why Danny and LeRoy's cousin and Brian Philpotts, you saw them in the previous picture. They're the two ophthalmologists that went with us. They wanted to see this, which is the reason that they went, which is the reason that LeRoy wanted to go. So we go all the way there. We get inside of this room, and we see that, and they go, "You can't take any pictures." And then there are guards everywhere. Not only guards, these guards carry machine guns. And so if you're at a store, you can see the machine gun. Right. And the guards in the hotels, machine guns. And so we go through, there's a line that goes around. So when we stayed until the museum closed, we were on our way out downstairs, and Brian is like, "I didn't come all this way not to get a picture of King Tut." Yeah. And he said to the guard, what can I do to get a picture? And the guard said, "I'll get in trouble, but I can go do something else." So they went back into the museum, and when they came back, they had these pictures. This one, Brian standing beside his death mask. This is Brian standing beside the death mask. So the two of them went back, and I said, "What'd you have to do to get a picture?" I think he slipped them $100 or something like that. And so they were able to get these pictures, and it made their trip worthwhile.
Yeah, and there's cameras everywhere. So actually what...
So the guard wouldn't get in trouble because he wasn't there right then.
Well, he turned his back, whatever. But then what he does is he turns back, and he knows what they're going to do, right? But he runs up to them and says, "Hey, give me that. What is that?" You know, like he's erasing it from their camera or whatever that. But
Oh, that's fun.
so, all right. Well, now here's King Tut himself. So, at where he's buried, and that's at the Valley of the Kings. Okay, so he was mummified. Obviously, that's his feet.
So when we were at the museum, we were in northern Egypt, which is in Cairo, and then we took a river cruise down to Luxor, to the Valley of the Kings, where you could actually go to the tomb. So while we saw his death mask and everything in Cairo, this is his actual body and his actual tomb, but we're now in Luxor.
Right. So that's his. Actually, you know, it's kind of deceptive because it's this perspective of it. But he's mummified there, and then that's the whole entirety of it. They have it in a glass case so that, you know, people aren't touching it and so forth.
And if you see, his feet were kind of irregular because they thought he had polio. And so if you look at some other artifacts, when they opened it up, they had almost 6,000 artifacts in there, and there were lots of canes. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of pictures of him or depictions of him in a chair, even when his wife is standing. And so they're thinking that he may have had some kind of malady, and he couldn't walk it because something about when they analyzed his feet
Yes.
didn't look as though they could hold his body up.
Like he had a clubbed foot or something like that. That's the top of his sarcophagus, and I guess it cracked when they first found it. So that's the sarcophagus that he was buried in. So all those nested coffins were inside of this sarcophagus there.
And look at the beautiful coloring that is still on the walls of the tomb about how many years later?
Oh.
That was found in 1926, thousands of years.
Here's a bust, an unfinished bust of Nefertiti. I took hundreds of pictures inside the museum of all kinds of things, and I didn't put all of those things in here, but I was just captivated by a couple of they made several of these, and they were unfinished busts, and you see at the top where it has a sort of what do you call that feature, Mark? Where the crown would go. This is just an unfinished one, but you can. What was interesting to me is that the artisan and the craftsmanship, you can see the line that's going straight down the nose where they would, use it as a measuring point to make the chiselings and the carvings and all of that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That's the head of Nefertiti, who's Akhenaten's, I think, principal queen, I believe. Now, this is a representation of the pharaoh Merneptah, and the reason why I put him there and put his name there. Now, in the Bible, there's many pharaohs that are in the Bible, but most of the pharaohs are not. Their names are not there. There's only a couple. Pharaoh Necho is one, and then Shishak, which they call Shishak. Shishak is there. I can give you the text for that. But most of the places where it says Pharaoh, it's just they don't give in the Bible. It doesn't give the names of who they are. So you have to kind of try to guess or to line up the best that you can from the age and the time and so forth. This Pharaoh Merneptah is, I think, the last son of Pharaoh Ramses the Great. And this Merneptah, there's a thing in the museum called a stele. A stele is a piece of it could be a carving or stone or whatever, and it has either hieroglyphs or something that tells a story. Merneptah's stele is the only stele that has the term that was used for the nation of Israel on it. This is what I was told and what I've read. What our guide told us was that Merneptah was the pharaoh that went after the children of Israel. Yeah, he was the one that chased them, Merneptah, and he didn't go into the water, but his soldiers, they all got drowned in the Red Sea, right? As the song said. But Merneptah, when you go to the Valley of the Kings, his sarcophagus is there. That's the top of the lid, and to the right you'll see the sarcophagus of which his coffin was inside of. So you look at the side there, and you see the railing, and then so you could walk up to that point, and then you could stop and take pictures there. Well, back over here, let me come over here now. So this railing is where all the people are come up and stop and look. Over on this side, you don't see them, but there's one of the attendants back here on the side, and there's a ledge. And he looks at me. He sees I'm so fascinated with this. He says, "Come here." So I walk on this ledge and walk back here with him, and he lets me go inside of the sarcophagus of Merneptah. And I took, so that's me inside the sarcophagus of Merneptah.
That's good. It gives you scale so you really see how big it is.
Right. And he let me take some pictures in there. And of course, I was happy to slide him a couple bucks, But that's the sarcophagus of Merneptah, the one who I understand is the one who went after the children of Israel.
Hard is hard.
This is, I think, one of my final slides, or one of the few that I have here. It's hard to see this, but this is a very interesting, and I'll tell you why. Our guide is devout Muslim, right, Osama. He's married to an Egyptian Jew, which I think was quite interesting. And so he's quite familiar with the stories of the Bible. He's very familiar with the stories of the Bible, and he knew that we were all Christians, and so he added that perspective everywhere that he could. When we went into one of the temples, and I forget which one, he said, "Come around here. This is one I want to show you. This is something that you only find in this place. It's no place else. But what it is a depiction. It's hard to make out, but it's a depiction of a pharaoh here. You see him, you see his crown up at the top. And what he is standing in front of, these are depictions of cows. and their depiction of precisely 7 cows. He said, could this be, it could be that this Pharaoh wanted this story of this, when you go back and read in Genesis, what chapter is that? That story is in? I have it written down here somewhere. I forget where it is, but anyway, it's the story of the dream that the Pharaoh had, and then Joseph was able to interpret the dream. Remember, they had the seven fat cows that came up out of the river, which was the Nile, and the 7 lean cows came out of them and ate them after. And then you also had ears of corn, 7 blasted ears of corn, and then that ate up. And so he was troubled by that dream, obviously, but none of his wise men, just like Nebuchadnezzar, none of his wise men were able to interpret. And that's when the one that was in prison with Joseph remembered and said, "There is a Hebrew." And so what I laugh about in the text, it says they brought him hastily. They brought him hastily to the king, and you can go back and read the story. But he said, "Listen, it's going to be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of drought. And so this is what I'm suggesting to you, Pharaoh. I'm suggesting, and there's one of 2 names. It's not in the Bible. They said that this Pharaoh's name could either be Sesostris I or a Pharaoh called Amenemhet. Okay. Anyway, not that important. He was a Pharaoh, whoever he was. He said, listen, get seek out a man who can organize everything, right, store up for this time period and so forth, for the time of plenty, and then you'll have plenty. So that's when the Pharaoh said, and his counselors said, who is there that is as wise as Joseph? So I'm laying this mantle on you. And that Pharaoh said, Joseph, this is the amazing thing about where Joseph came from and all that happened to him. That's right. He said that no one in Egypt, the only person that is above you in authority is me. Right. And that Hebrew boy, that Joseph, that went through all that he went through, from prison to the palace. And so what he surmises, what our guide surmises, is that he said there's no place else in Egypt where this depiction is. And he says hardly anybody comes back around to that part of the temple to look at it. Could it be that that Pharaoh wanted that story to remain in perpetuity, because it's no reason for it to have 7 cows. It's no reason for that Pharaoh to be standing in front of 7 cows. And it's nowhere else depicted anywhere else. So that was very interesting to me when I saw that. Again, we don't know if that is precisely what that means, but it's certainly an interesting concept. Here's something that Dawn, and you can talk about this because you sent that to me to put in there.
When we were going around Egypt for those 2 weeks, I kept seeing a black spot on everybody's head. And I was like, what is going on? At first I thought, I didn't think much of it, but it became more and more regular. When we were leaving the Valley of the Kings, we stopped, they would take you to different shops and that kind of thing. And there were these men out there, and each of them had that. And I asked this gentleman if I could take a picture of him, and he said yes. And I went back to our tour director, and I said, Osama, why does everyone have a thing there? And that's because the Muslims pray 5 times a day. And so they would bend down. When they bend down, their head would touch the ground. And I guess if you do that for 40 years, you get a little thing right here. Isn't that, I just thought that was so interesting. And so I said to Osama, well, where's your thing? How come you don't have one? And he said, people that work, so he's working with us. He literally, I don't even know how he slept because he was with us except for when we were sleeping. And he said he lived about 2 or 3 hours away. So I don't know where he stayed. But if you're working, he said, you didn't have to stop and pray. And then he grew up actually in Saudi Arabia. So with his father had been an expat in Saudi Arabia, and then they moved back to Egypt when he was older. But that I thought that was interesting, and it also, I asked him if there was some status attached to it, because if you know, the darker it is, the more religious you are, kind of thing. And he said in some circles, but in others it could mean that you're very busy, and you have, if you don't pray, then you can pray at another time. But even our bus, Osama was our tour guide, but we always had a driver, and occasionally we even had a guard with a gun. And so the driver would get out if we stopped to do something and take his mat, and I could see him over in a shop. He can go into a shop and put down his rug and pray during the day. So I thought, boy, they're very devout. I don't know that I pray five times a day. And
people are serious about it.
they're serious. They're very serious.
And they pray towards facing Mecca. I believe.
Facing Mecca. When we were in, I don't know if you have pictures of this. When we were in Alexandria, which is in northern Egypt, we went one day. We were driving down the street in our bus, and thousands of men, thousands of people were just standing in the streets, on the sidewalk, facing one way, and we didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, Osama, what's going on? He said, it's prayer time, and you can hear the gonging.
Yeah, the call to prayer.
The call to prayer. So all of those were men facing Mecca praying in the street. And he said, they're all men. And I go, really? And then when I looked, yes, they were all men. And then you could, as we drove down some more, so I'm talking about, let's say you're driving down a main street. If we look down all of the cross streets, just littered, packed. This person, this person, this person, this person. And then when we went down some more, you could see ladies inside. So still they have that ancient tradition of the men separated from the ladies. So religious law, of course, rules their land, and it was quite interesting to see.
Yeah. Wow. This is an obelisk. This picture's in there because when we were on our way back, our plane, we were in Paris. And we had a 14-hour layover in Paris. So we said, well, we don't want to just sit for 14 hours. We might as well get in a cab and go around. So one of the things that countries over the years, to a greater or lesser degree, they have these pacts with Egypt because there are many artifacts that were taken from Egypt by United States, by Great Britain, by other places. But I think we have sort of led the way in sending some of those things back. Well, this is an obelisk that's in Paris that I think Napoleon was responsible for that getting there.
So when we went to the Luxor temple, there were two obelisks at the beginning, at the gates of the temple. But there were supposed to be two, but only one was there. And he said that one had been stolen and had been taken to Paris.
Taken to Paris.
And so we got out and we wanted to see this is the stolen obelisk.
Yeah, I don't think France is in any rush to give it back.
They also blame Napoleon for shooting the nose off the fruit.
Yeah, but that
might be cool.
Well, he said Napoleon, so just like the Sphinx has no nose, many statues there didn't have a nose because that would be their way of defacing them.
Right. And what you have is many the rulers that came after wanted to deface the ones before because they wanted to to prop themselves up. So a lot of that stuff kind of went on. But this is the obelisk that was taken to Paris from here. And reason why this is in there, we were in Paris, so that's the Eiffel Tower, and we took a couple pictures of that.
And just as we went to see, we had just come from Egypt, and we stopped in Paris and wrote down about 4 or 5 places we wanted the taxi to take us. I've never been to France before, and one of the things we wanted to see, as I said, was the obelisk. So as we're leaving there, we could see the Eiffel. I'd never seen the Eiffel Tower, and so the Eiffel Tower was in the distance. And LeRoy says, "Do you want to go up in the Eiffel Tower?" And I said, "I just saw a pyramid yesterday. Why? I don't need to go in the Eiffel Tower because comparatively, mean, the pyramid was much more stunning, and and much bigger and that kind of thing. We just had seen so many wonderful things. We just looked at it from outside, but it was a good.
And Eiffel Tower is part of the modern world.
I'm going back because I just want to read something from you that's interesting, and this is from the Andrews Bible Commentary, and it's talking about archaeology in the Bible. And I found this to be, yes. Oh, Pharaoh LeRoy? Yeah. Well, yeah, they wrote. This is interesting. It says here, now we all know the story about Aaron's rod, right? You remember the story about Aaron's rod?
Yes.
Okay, and that when God told Aaron and Moses to go to Pharaoh, he said, "I'm going to throw down your rod," but then they threw down their rods too, right? But I want you to get this. This is in the Archaeology in the Bible. This is in the Andrews Bible Commentary. It says here, the story of Aaron's rod changing to a serpent before Pharaoh and his court is a remarkable demonstration of the power of God. However, it may have had significance beyond just the obvious. Texts recovered in excavations in Egypt reveal that Egyptians had more than 1,500 gods and goddesses. Two of these were considered protectors of the two lands of Egypt. Remember we talked about Upper and Lower Egypt? Okay, so two of their gods, two of these were considered protectors of the lands of Egypt. Nekhbet, which is the vulture goddess, protected the narrow Nile Valley of Upper Egypt, and Wadjet, the cobra goddess, protected the broad Nile Delta region of the Lower Egypt. Both appeared on the crown of Pharaoh, where Wadjet was called Uriah. So those things at the top of the headdress of the Pharaoh, one is the cobra god, and one is but here's the point, what I'm getting at. It says, but the Egyptians also had a god named Nehebu Kau, meaning he who harnesses the spirits, who had been worshipped since the time of the pyramids of the Old Kingdom. Nehebu Kau was a serpent god who was considered to have great power because he swallowed 7 cobras. All right, this is, okay, so watch this now. It is certain that every Egyptian in that room where Aaron's rod turned into a serpent would have immediately understood the significance of Aaron's serpent swallowing the serpents of the magicians.
That's right.
You get that?
Yeah.
God was communicating to the Egyptians in a language that they would clearly understand before he sent any of the plagues.
That's right.
Before any plague fell, that he had ultimate power over Egypt's gods.
That's right.
Pharaoh, who denied knowing God, was introduced to God in a way that could not have been misunderstood. So I found that to be interesting because I didn't know about that God and that story about their God.
Paying homage to the true God. Yes.
So
The one that ate up their God.
this is what we can get from archaeology and this is what helps us to even understand the Bible in better light. When they're able to dig up these history and stories of these things, because now that puts the story of Aaron's rod swallowing the snakes even an extra light. God was using that because they had a story. They had a story that this God of theirs, their made-up God, swallowed 7 snakes. So when he had Aaron throw down his rod, he literally had Aaron's rod, which turned into a snake, swallow their God. So everybody who saw that would have said, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
This God is the true God.
Right.
But then the text after says, but Pharaoh hardened his heart.
Right.
He hardened his heart. And he should have known better. Even before one plague fell, he should have known that the God of Israel was the true God.
Right.
So,
You have to let them go and chase them.
so that was very interesting to me. There are other things that I could talk about here, but I don't want to go on here tonight talking about. But I do want to mention one thing on the call of Abram, and in Genesis 12. just do this quickly and then we'll call it an evening. Genesis 12. And there was famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous. And if you read just before that, he started out from a place called Negev. And Negev is, I don't know if you look at Israel there, Negev is in the south part, in that part that's going down and tapered and so forth. There's a desert there called the Negev Desert. And left from Negev, and he went into Egypt. This is God's people's first encounter with Egypt, and he went there because why? Because all the land was there was a famine. Yes, so they must have been told that there's the river in Egypt, and there's food in Egypt, and so forth. So go there. So the famine was grievous in the land. Verse 10, verse 11. It came to pass, he was come near to enter into Egypt, and he said unto Sarah's wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Now, Moses had Abram had there was nothing. That was something that was going on in his head that he concocted. The Egyptian had more integrity, if you will, in this situation than he did. That's right. Because he should have just told them that this is my wife. And but the story goes on to say, and it came to pass that when Abram had come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman; she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her. They understood her to be his sister, right? So it was customary for the person that was in power, the Pharaoh at the time, to take wives of people from other countries. And other countries did the same thing too as well. So she came into his court. But then he entered and he entreated, it came to pass, blah, blah, blah. The 15, and the princes of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abraham well for her sake, for he had sheep and oxen and he-asses and men servants and maid servants and she-asses and camels. So the implication is that he was paid a dowry for her. So Abraham was enriched by this. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house and with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done to me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? So obviously, at some point in time, it was revealed to, I don't know how it was revealed to him.
God revealed it to him.
I guess what I'm saying is that, yes, we understand that to be the case. It's not saying it directly here, but that had to be the case, that it was revealed to him. Why saidst thou that she is my sister, so I might have taken her to be wife, taken to me the wife? Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men and concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. And I guess one of the points that I want to make, or the points I want to make, is that even though God has his chosen people, we're all created by God, and all people are God's people. And we have to understand that God works through everyone for the salvation of souls. It's not that the Egyptians were morally bankrupt or whatever. Yes, they believed in gods and so forth, but they were devoted to whatever beliefs that they had. God was trying to show them through Israel who the true God was. And many of them did come to know who the true God was. And when Israel went out of Egypt land, many of those that believed in the true God went out with them as well too. And so what I'm saying is that we have a world to win. And everyone that's out there is somebody that Jesus Christ gave his life for. Whether you're born in Africa, whether you're born in Russia, whether you're born in China, no matter what your beliefs, our system are, Jesus Christ gave his life for everyone. And I think it's up to us, to take the message, as we say as Seventh-day Adventists, take the message, tell the world, take the message to the world that Jesus saves. And so in this story, this story, this incredible story of Egypt, there's a lot I could talk about. God used that situation, that fertile land that was along the strip of that Nile River, basically to save the world. Through Joseph and those who had the interaction, they were able to save the entire world from famine because of that rich civilization there. Yes. So let's choose to, as we live out our lives and we go from day to day, let's choose to offer the world salvation and point people to Jesus Christ. That's my goal in life. Point people to Jesus Christ. Show them that Jesus is the way, and by whatever means necessary, show them that Jesus is the way. So hopefully you enjoyed what I had to present here this evening. Thank you for your attention. It's just something, again, being there in that place just helps me to see the Old Testament even in a whole different light, because the stories just come alive for me now in a way that they hadn't before. I went to the Nile River. We put our feet in the water, We saw the bulrushes. I can see Moses' little basket just going down the river, that kind of thing. It's just something about seeing the place that really makes the stories come alive in the Bible. All right. You want to pray for us?
Let's have our closing prayer. Bow your heads. Dear Heavenly kind Father, thank you for bringing us to the close of another Sabbath, Father. We just bless everyone that's represented here and all of our family members, Father. Help that as we go through the next week, we'll carry the messages from today with us to change our lives for good and to help to mold our characters, Father. We're just grateful for this time to be together to share your love in thy name and for his sake. Amen.